About a year ago, a YouTuber known as Nando v Movies created a video in celebration of the release of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, where he would discuss a particular scene featuring a villain and also invited several other content creators to participate with their own choices. And since this is a continuing trend in which anyone can join in, I thought to myself, why not? After all, in many forms of media, villains tend to be one of the most interesting parts of them, whether it's Darth Vader, Maleficent, Megatron, the Joker, and countless others. So I wondered, who should I pick? What villainous moment left a significant impact on me? Then it hit me.
Where should I sit?
Let's talk about Jinx. Jinx is one of the main characters of the Netflix animated series called Arcane, and for the very few who haven't seen this amazing show, I'll give a brief summary. Arcane is a show based off of the incredibly popular game League of Legends created by Riot Games, and it serves as an origin story for several popular characters such as Vi, Caitlyn, Jace, Victor, and of course,
Jinx! That's me!
And yes, I did say main characters and not main villains. I say this for a very specific reason. Jinx is tragic. About as tragic a character as it's possible to be. So how does she have a villainous scene if I consider her a tragic character instead of a villain, you may ask? Well, the scene I think truly defines her as one is the final scene of the series. So it goes without saying, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what happens, I highly recommend checking out the series. I'll give you all a few moments to click away. Still here? Alright, let's go. I want to start out by giving a quick shout out to Sarcastic Chorus, Flying Walrus, and Cinema Therapy for their fantastic Arcane videos. The latter two especially dive into Jinx's mental health. Links to the videos will be in the description below. But I want to dive into how the show, and most specifically the finale, defines Jinx as a villain in the series. The most important part of it is that this is the conclusion of an origin story, where one has gone through a horrific change, both physically and in what one believes. To be at the stage of doing things that they wouldn't do before, a point of no return. I think it's safe to say there has been a significant change, especially in recent years, to make villains more, for lack of a better word, human. It's become more and more common to see more three-dimensional villains with understandable motives, actions they feel are justified, and of course, a tragic backstory that sets them on their path. The most basic of qualities we find in the most layered characters are the choices they make. It's what defines who we are and what we do. Now what if that was taken away, constantly challenged, or even shapes the characters into something more terrible? That is what I'm going to talk about. The scene takes place right at the end of the last episode, appropriately named The Monster You Created, serving as the season's climax. Jinx has kidnapped her older sister Violet, nicknamed Vi, and brought her to where Silco, the show's main villain, once had a base of operations. A very specific choice, as it is the site of many traumatic events, all of which I'll address whenever they are relevant. The pair of them are alone.
For now.
I'll start by saying that what I initially love about this scene is that Jinx and Vi's sisterly relationship is the heart of the show. While yes, there are many plots involving characters like Jace, Victor, Echo, Heimerdinger, and so on that are about determining what is best for Piltover and Zorn, what is the right or wrong course of action, is peace or violence the solution, are advancements in science and magic or staying safe the way forward? The show asks all these questions, but at its very core, it's about these sisters being forced apart in countless ways and trying to find each other, because they believe that they are all that they have left. In the beginning, both of them become orphaned after their parents are killed during a failed uprising, an event that causes Jinx, who I'll refer to as Powder during any part where I discuss the first act, to have intense abandonment issues, specifically towards her older sister. Then they are found by Vander, the leader of the Zorn uprising, who willingly drops his gauntlets, knowing that the battle is lost, and adopts the two sisters, choosing a life of parental responsibility instead of a life of violence towards Piltover. In doing so, he becomes the first true paternal figure for both Powder and Vi. Despite this though, Vi is the only real guidance in Powder's life, as surprisingly, Vander and her hardly have much of a relationship, as his focus is primarily on keeping the peace within Zorn, and on Vi. She's the one that gets life lessons from him, not Powder. Because of this, Powder is emotionally vulnerable and over-dependent on Vi to the point where she specifically clings to her approval and praise, and without it, Powder feels like a failure, someone of no value or use. The next few lines from Jinx I really wanted to discuss as she talks about who made her the way she is, especially this one.
But he didn't make Jinx. You did.
This can be viewed differently, depending on which point of view you take. For Vi, this really hurts. Not because it's a mere taunt, but because she herself finds a lot of truth to it. When I said earlier that Vi was Powder's main source of guidance, she was also the one person who saw her potential during their younger years despite Powder's flaws. You see, early in the first episode, during a heist in Piltover, Powder accidentally causes an explosion in one of the apartments by dropping an unstable Hextech crystal. This essentially sets up the plot of the entire season, with threatening the peace between Piltover and Zorn, as well as initiating the series of events that leads us to this point. After escaping Piltover's enforcers, we see one of their friends, Milo, belittle Powder by calling her a jinx due to her clumsiness, getting them constantly into trouble, treated like a bad luck charm. This fuels her doubts in her own capabilities. She's never given any opportunity during their excursions to prove her worth through her talents such as her precise gunmanship. Instead, she tries to focus on her ingenuity by building little bombs that never seem to work. And though Vi defends her, as any sister would, even comforting her in a touching scene where she shows that everybody has problems and makes mistakes, there is certainly something that tells Vi that Milo isn't wrong. He's just not very tactful with how he addresses it, leading to a lot of squabbles between the two. But as the enforcers tighten their grip on Zorn, the group are put into greater danger with closer calls as they are the ones specifically being hunted down because of Powder. To reiterate, it's at this point where she is emotionally vulnerable and insecure, not only feeling guilty over the damage she's caused, but also feeling like a failure. This is a character who's raised in such a difficult situation with the classic saying in any of these kind of stories, the strong survive, the weak perish. Because of this, Powder's only real sense of purpose or use in her eyes is through her sister's approval. But in the third episode, things take a turn following Vander's efforts to keep the peace when Silco and Deckard, ready to enact revenge on Vander and seize power in Zorn, ambush him and take him to Silco's production facility, where he and a scientist named Singed are developing a drug called Shimmer that turns users into, well, this. The group decides to go and rescue him, but Vi makes Powder stay behind, mostly to keep her safe. But I think secretly she doesn't want Powder to mess things up. Even after all the encouragement from Vi earlier, the one pillar of support she truly had, the fact that she doesn't want her help makes Powder feel worse than anything else up to this point. She breaks down, as any child would. A more heartbreaking reaction than just screaming about how everyone's holding her back and then getting comforted by someone who assures her that murdering people when angry is perfectly okay. Sorry, I blacked out there for a moment. Where was I? Oh yeah. Then, against Vi's wishes, she decides to go after them, determined to help and prove herself as a perfectly capable asset to the team. When she arrives on the scene, the group have managed to rescue Vander and are so close to escaping. Then things take a turn for the worst. A single blast from one of her bombs fitted with a Hextech crystal makes Powder lose everything. Milo and Clagger from the explosion, Vander after sacrificing himself to save Vi, and Vi herself once she finds out what Powder did. And understandably, Vi's livid. With a smack, Vi delivers an onslaught of words that cut Powder to the core.
Because you're a jinx! Do you hear me? Milo was right!
The one thing she doesn't want to hear. The confirmation of how Powder thinks Vi truly feels about her. That she has no worth, no talent, no anything but that she's a jinx that ruins everything. With the deed done, Vi walks away, only to be arrested before she can change her mind and go back to her sister. Powder is at her lowest point. Nobody is there for her, not even her sister. Her abandonment and guilt of what she did eats away at her. Then she is found by Silco, who hesitates in killing her, but instead comforts her. And in response, Powder does the unthinkable. She hugs Silco like a parent, clinging to the only thing she currently has. Her vulnerability now makes perfect sense as she is a child and lacks the experience to know better. Unlike someone who just switches sides in the millisecond because he thinks his wife might die and goes on to willingly murder children. Sorry, I'll stop that. Anyway. And Silco adopts her, taking this whole emotional roller coaster for Powder from bad to worse. Jeez, I had so much to talk about that I almost forgot that I'm talking about the ending. But the first 3 episodes really do such a great job at establishing how Powder makes her first steps to becoming Jinx that there was a lot of baggage to unpack. And we haven't even gotten to the main event. So, now back to the scene itself. Vi is not the only one that can be blamed for Jinx, but I'll get to that shortly. Vi apologizes for leaving Powder, showing just as much guilt for her actions as she does. But Jinx responds with,
You never left.
This, right here, is one of, if not the biggest driving force of the season. Vi and Powder's sisterly bond. Right from the start, they faced everything together. From the death of their parents, the Hextech explosion, Vander's capture, and of course the fateful night that resulted in the deaths of the remaining family they had. But throughout the rest of the season, despite leaving Powder behind, Vi never stopped thinking about her. And likewise, despite being taken in by Silco, Jinx is haunted by the thought of her sister. From the moment we are introduced to Jinx in episode 4, despite having a newfound confidence in herself, it begins to break when she encounters a girl who resembles Vi, making her lose her focus and failing her mission. Even though she still shoots her, the mere image of this girl brings back haunting memories of Vi. The same can be said of Vi. Though we don't see her experience horrific flashbacks or visions like Jinx does, her actions tell a different story. The moment that Caitlyn, a Piltover investigator, shows her evidence of Jinx's involvement with Silco's men, Vi almost immediately jumps to the occasion, not out of a desire to help others, mind you, but to find her younger sister. This is her main motive throughout the season and one of the driving story arcs.
Are we still sisters?
A question that cuts to the core. For any sibling, the answer would be yes. But in this case, so much has changed within the last few years. Maybe too much. And that's without referring to the first act. One's a released prisoner, the other, a killer working for a ruthless drug lord. And yet, when they do reunite in episode 6, after Jinx found out that Silco lied to her about her sister being gone, we get a moment of that sisterly love, as though nothing bad had happened.
Are you real?
That really hits me. In fact, the reunion itself does. But then things get complicated with the arrival of Caitlyn. Oh boy, I'll get to Caitlyn shortly. We still have a lot of the final scene to talk about. Jinx takes Vi to a table, where Silco is sitting, also bound. But there are also several other objects, including mementos that she has that represent Milo and Clagger. We frequently see these 2 mannequins? Dolls? Either way, she keeps them where she resides. Why? I'm not entirely sure. I can see 2 sides to this. On one hand, it could be that Jinx is trying to recapture her lost childhood, and of course being berated by Milo was a common thing to occur. Though it does seem strange she'd want to keep rather unpleasant memories, but it feels that's all she can remember as she's tried to put her past behind her with immense difficulty. On the other hand, they seem like twisted trophies, used to remind her of what she did, even if it was unintentional. We also see a shattered family photo, quite a literal meaning of a family now broken, as well as Vi's doll, a sentimental object representing her and her perseverance. Though I also see it as a gift that she gave to Powder to believe in herself and her potential before it's unfortunately taken away. Once at the table, like some twisted Wonderland tea party, Jinx briefly explains why they're in this location. It was the site where everything changed for all of them, though it was also where Silco quite literally stabbed Vander in the back. Bringing him here is like giving him a taste of his own medicine, having overheard his plans of how he can achieve peace, by giving her up to Piltover, and she was not going to let that happen. Then she indicates that something is missing at the table. She brings in a platter with a cover on it, leading to probably one of my favourite little moments.
What did you do?
I made her a snack.
That face right there, that should be a meme. Then again, most of Jinx's crazy faces should be memes. The animators didn't let up when handling the face expressions throughout the entire season. Everybody talks about how amazing the show's animation is, but words can't do it justice. But look at the expressions on display. Animation is supposed to exaggerate what can be exaggerated, and here is no exception. A lot of people would probably have preferred if it felt more realistic, like going as far as doing performance capture and so on, but the advantage they had without relying on that really shows. Every emotion you see, you feel. Every smile, every tear, every scream. And in the case with Jinx here, I feel like laughing as much as being creeped out, so wonderful job here. After a little build-up, it was just a joke to scare Vi.
Sheesh, I'm not that crazy.
Huh, Who knew that even Jinx had her own limits? Though I have to admit, it's kind of funny how even she thinks she's crazy, just not that much. And with that, she brings in Caitlyn. Now we can talk about her. I won't talk about her whole story, she's got a big story arc of her own. I only want to focus on how it connects to Jinx's. Caitlyn is a threat. Not only because she wants to bring Jinx to justice for the various crimes she's committed in Piltover, but also as an emotional wedge between her and Vi. Jinx's abandonment issues are heavily tested at the moment she meets Vi again, as she is accompanied by Caitlyn. This makes Jinx question her sister's motives, whether or not she really wants to find her again, or only wants to lead Caitlyn to her, as she's not only a wanted criminal for acts of terrorism, but also thinking that they wanted the Hextech crystal she stole earlier. They're separated again when Vi and Caitlyn are captured by their childhood friend Echo, leaving Jinx alone again, fighting a mental and emotional battle within herself, becoming more confused as to who to believe. She confronts Silco about her recent encounter, claiming that he lied to her about Vi being alive and free from prison. He insists they only want the crystal, and he twists the knife deeper by reminding her who her real family is. He then presses her to finish the weapon she's making with the Hextech crystal. Ooh boy, I'll be saving the rest of what I have to say about Silco for later. Back to Vi and Caitlyn. They are later brought back to Piltover by Echo, and this is where Jinx finds out about their platonic relation. Sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face. Unable to hear Vi's words about how she can't leave her sister behind again, she can see their friendship being a bit over-friendly.
Shut up. It's just a goodbye hug.
Gay!
All the while still being haunted by visions of Milo and Clagger. Vi at first does what she says and leaves the two, but at the sound of Marcus's gun, Caitlyn's boss is in cahoots with Silco, Vi instantly changes her mind, confirming Jinx's worst fears. Vi lied to her, at least in her eyes. She confronts them on the bridge while humming the song she sang last time she was there. A really nice, yet very haunting touch. Before she faces off against Echo in a spectacular battle, Jinx envisions Caitlyn as a rather devilish figure. The fight leaves both her and Echo severely injured. Silco finds Jinx and immediately takes her to Singed, desperate to save her. He does, pumping her veins with shimmer, but unlike Deckard from earlier, she doesn't turn into a Hulk-like monster. Instead, it heavily affects her mind, as well as giving her the iconic pink-eyed colour she has in the game. This leads to several really creepy shots throughout the last two episodes, notably the ones where her eyes reveal where she's hiding in the darkness. As for her mental state, well, it just got a lot worse. Back to the present, now that all the pieces are in place, Jinx asks the very question that inspired me to make this entire video.
Where should I sit?
This summarizes her whole character. Jinx is someone constantly battling on two sides, and I don't mean in a war between two factions, I mean emotionally. What matters the most to her? Her childhood family or current? Between the sister that abandoned her or the father that took her in? Hell, even between the two, she struggles with who to believe as she thinks both are lying. Not only that, but she's also someone who's never been able to be herself. She's been forged by her lifestyle, surroundings and contacts. As a child, she lacked the guidance of a parent but was never given the chance to show her potential. And as a teenager, they never really specifically state her age in the series, so feel free to correct me. Even though she has a parental figure, it's someone trying to forge her into something. A tool. One that spends a good chunk of her time inventing rather destructive weapons. Only this time, she willingly lets someone else make a choice for her. Following her question to Vi, she hands her a gun with a single request: to kill Caitlyn. In her mind, it will remove the source of the problem in her current state and allow her and Vi to be sisters again, like nothing happened. This bit legit unsettles me, because this is a trait you can usually find in murderers, those that see killing as a solution to their issues, whether it's for money, revenge, or in this case, stealing her sister from her. Vi refuses to pull the trigger, once again seeming to prove Jinx's fears, but her hallucinations begin to flare up worse than ever, and I really need to bring them up. They're gorgeously animated and are shown to evolve as Jinx's mental state deteriorates. Early on, they're pretty subtle, mostly reserved for her visions of Milo and Clagger, but once she's saved by Singed, they significantly worsen, completely warping and distorting reality. During her surgery, she envisions a demented version of Vi and Caitlyn laughing at her, causing her to become alarmingly paranoid, specifically about Vi leaving her for Caitlyn. The only other thing I'll mention about the hallucination is an interesting little detail. Whenever they occur, you can see a lot of scribbles, almost the kind of drawings a child would do. But what I find intriguing is as the visions get worse, the drawings become more sketchy, looking more and more like the kind of scribbles that someone would do when they mess up a drawing. I was gonna say when they don't have a rubber, but I feel that would make everybody giggle, so I'll say whenever they can't erase it before starting over. But I digress. Vi, in an attempt to save Caitlyn, promises Jinx they can leave together, never to see Silco again. But then she walks over to Silco, ungags him, and gives him a chance to defend himself. He proclaims that Vi is lying, as do all who betrayed them, that she's changed too much for even her own sister. He also states that he made a deal with Jace to ensure peace, but he refused it because...
It's only us. You're my daughter.
I guess now's as good a time as any to talk about one of the major elements that drives Powder's story throughout the rest of the series, her relationship with Silco. Now I need to let something off my chest first by saying that I've heard a lot of people saying Silco's a good father.
How about no?
Silco is anything but that. You may as well call Palpatine a good parental figure, or Thanos, or call the Joker a good boyfriend. But what do all of these characters have in common? They're all manipulative individuals who exploit others and turn them into tools they can use as a means to an end, and Silco is no different. While I do genuinely believe that he cares about Jinx, which is shown a great deal throughout the season, it still doesn't justify in the slightest all the terrible things he does throughout the show. Not even throwing aside everything he's doing just to save Jinx after her battle with Echo. Now don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic character, serving as the perfect antagonist for the series, but he's certainly not a good person, let alone a good father. I can't help but be concerned for those that feel like that. As for his words, they cause Jinx to become more confused, unsure who really is lying between the two people she has left. This is then interrupted by Caitlyn, who's managed to free herself, leading to the two of them having a brief standoff. I just want to bring up something interesting that concerns Vi as much as Jinx. At the present point of the season, all main pieces are on the board. What I mean by this is how for Vi and Jinx, they each have two characters representing a moral side. For Vi, she's torn between her sister, lost through the lies of Silco, and Caitlyn, the law enforcement whose job is to ensure the safety of everybody else, as well as her, emotional support. As for Jinx, Vi represents her past life with her sister, while Silco represents her present. Both have their own angels and devils, so to speak. It's definitely no coincidence that these are the characters chosen for this scene. Vi begs Caitlyn not to shoot, but this gives Jinx the opportunity to knock her out and seize her gun. But now is where the true inner conflict begins for her. Vi and Silco's words battle each other for control inside her head. Two polar opposites collide in probably the greatest depiction of a mental breakdown I've ever seen. I know I've already just talked about the animation of her hallucinations, but it really is top notch. But now we can add flashes of everybody Jinx cares about, from Milo and Clagger to Vanda. Scribbles that represent them crawl all over as though the guilt of her past is eating away at her. But still, the voices of Vi and Silco are screaming into her head. Then Silco attempts to silence Vi, and at the sound of the pistol, Jinx snaps, unleashing a hail of bullets everywhere. Vi survives, but Silco gets the brunt of it. Realizing what she's done, Jinx makes it to her dying father figure, apologizing profusely. Silco isn't angry or upset, he's comforting. He tells her not to cry, and reassures her that he would never have given her up to Piltover, not even to achieve the peace he wanted for Zorn. To me, this is the final steps in Jinx's path, killing not only another person she cared for, but for the man who made her. This was a man driven by several goals, gaining power, achieving Zorn's independence by any means necessary, and more personally, getting his revenge on Vander, the man who betrayed him and left him scarred both physically and mentally. And even though he succeeds in taking out Vander, though it's not purely him that did it, he found another way to twist the knife even further, by taking in one of Vander's children and raising her as his own. What a better way to get back at Vander than adopting Powder and shaping her into a weapon that's a reflection of himself. And it is confirmed by his last dying words.
You're perfect.
And with that, Silco dies, and Jinx stands up to make her way to her sister again. At long last, she sits down at what she truly believes is where she belongs. She has become Jinx. And what is her first choice now that she has officially assumed her new identity? Fire a single rocket right at the seat of power in Piltover, just as the councillors are about to vote for peace with Zorn, leaving everyone around at the mercy of what she has done. What Arcane has done is not only create a beautiful series, filled with memorable and layered characters, but also crafted one of the greatest villain origin stories ever put on screen. And the best part? I genuinely have no idea what's going to happen next, and that excites me. Now that Jinx has embraced her identity, how will she work as a full-on villain? How will her relationship with Vi evolve? Will their sisterly bond break completely and they become arch enemies? Will Vi try to redeem Jinx? Can she even be redeemed? There are so many questions left unanswered, and I look forward to seeing them being answered. But I think what I can take out of it more than anything is that this story can go almost anywhere with Jinx, and it'll work well because she's been established as a great, tragic, and complex character. Who knows what the future will hold for her? One thing's for absolute certain is that the people at Riot Games and 40 should be extremely proud of what they've accomplished, and in this specific case, they made a great villainous scene.